This is my 2014 Fiesta ST, and I've just had it detailed so thoroughly that I'm afraid to even touch it for fear of soiling it. I bought this car new in May of 2015, and now, 4 years later, it has just crossed over 100,000 miles. Stop! I left my phone in the car. I don't care what you need. If you need to touch the car in any form, you're going to put these gloves on first, okay? Okay, whatever. Need your filth smudging up the car. Anyway, it has just crossed over 100,000 miles, and it's about time I tell you how this lovely little hot hatch has treated me over the past 4 years and 160,000 kilometers. Why? I don't know. Y'all keep asking me about it, so here's your video. As I already said, I bought this ST new in May of 2015 while I was still in college. Well, at the tail end of it anyway. And since then, it has been my reliable yet fun main car nearly every day. I used this car to commute back and forth to my first job outside of college. I used it last year as a commuter every day when I lived an hour away from work. I drove it back and forth to Kansas City from St. Louis multiple times this year when well, don't worry about it. I drove it to ST Octane Academy after I first bought it, which is Ford's performance driving school. I even slept in it on the way. I've autocrossed it. I've used it to haul lumber, steel, animals, Uber passengers, which are basically the same thing as animals, and even an 8-foot ladder. I have used the crap out of this car, and it has seen nearly the entirety of my adult life after college. So this car is now a part of my story. It's just too bad I can never touch it again. I'd get fingerprints on it. Speaking of which, a friend of mine recently detailed this car so thoroughly that he even de-rusted and touch-up painted the undercarriage, which is quite the change up over the once a year or so car wash this thing is used to seeing. He even went as far as giving me new floor mats, because the full paint correction wasn't enough apparently. If he has any relevant leaks, I'll share them in the description below. Anyway, back to the car that resides underneath all of this shiny. You may be wondering how this car has held up over the past 4 years and 86,900 nautical miles. Or maybe you're not wondering. Too bad, I'm going to tell you anyway. It's done just fine. And that's the main reason I rarely make a video about this thing, because my Fiesta ST continues to work reliable is a far less enticing video than my Fiesta ST's engine blew up and took out 2 children and a dog. The reality is it's hardly had any issues. It did go into limp mode once. That happened, but it was just one time. And the brake pads, they only lasted 40,000 miles. I guess that's kind of annoying. The radio sometimes stops working. That's a little more annoying, but I can fix that by just unhooking the battery and plugging it back in real quick. So that's not a huge issue. Oh yeah, and the engine chokes and tries to die if I overfill the gas tank, but that's really sort of my fault. So yeah, it's basically been completely trouble-free since I've owned it. But what is currently broken on my fist, as the kids call it these days? Well, for starters, and finishers, because it's the only problem, the HVAC blend door makes this sound when I change the vent setting. It just keeps clicking away like that for quite a while before it stops. Now, I haven't fixed this issue yet because I tend to gravitate towards cars that are either very broken, very terrible, or very weird. Since the Fiesta ST is none of those things, I like to keep at least one thing on it in a state of not working to avoid being bored. This clicking that happens in the dash when I change the vent setting provides just enough of a shoddy feeling to keep me entertained. Okay, that's a complete lie. The truth is, I haven't gotten around to fixing it yet because I'm a lazy ass. One thing I have had fairly consistent trouble with has almost nothing to do with the car. It's the wheels. Okay, I realize that has a lot to do with the car, but what I'm talking about is the protection plan I got for the wheels when I bought the car. When I bought the car, I also bought a $500 wheel protection plan from the dealership. I was afraid I would constantly curb these wheels, what with its low-profile tires and everything, and the wheel protection plan covers wheel repaintings, wheel replacements, and tire replacements for 5 years. Well, I'm glad I got this wheel protection plan because it is more than paid for itself. Would you like to guess how many wheels I've had repainted? Well, I've actually lost count, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 24 wheels I've had repainted, approximately. And that's the consistent trouble I've had. I haven't had about 24 wheels repainted because I average 6 wheel curbings per year. I've had about 24 wheels repainted because just about every time I take this car into the shop for wheel repair, they screw something up. For instance, the last time I took this car in for wheel repair, they just needed to repaint one wheel. The only problem is they repainted that one wheel the wrong color. So then I had to take the car back to the shop to have the other 3 wheels painted to match. And then, a few weeks later, because they hadn't cured the paint properly, the paint started peeling off the wheels and I had to take the car in back to the shop again to have all 4 wheels repainted again. Now, I really can't complain about this stuff because it's all been free, and frankly, it entertains me and creates for a good story. And the wheel protection plan even provides a free rental car for a few days while my Fiesta's in the shop. So I usually have something fun to play with while my Fiesta's getting its wheels repainted. What I can complain about, however, is the last job they did. Several months ago, I hit a pothole the size and depth of a large pothole, and it ruined a tire. Well, the replacement plan thing, it covers the cost of a replacement tire, but they couldn't find an exact replacement for my general G-Maxes, so they spec'd me a similar Pirelli. Well, I didn't want a single mismatched Pirelli on my car, so I paid a little bit extra and bought a second Pirelli so I could at least have a pair of Pirellis on the front and a pair of G-Maxes on the back, or vice versa. Well, they screwed that up. So instead of having Pirellis on the front and G-Maxes on the rear, I have Pirellis on the right side of the car and G-Maxes on the left. They made it a side-to-side pairing for whatever reason. And to make matters even worse, the G-Maxes are a directional tire, so they can only ever be on one side of the car if you want them rotating in the right direction. So I can't rearrange the tires to be a front and back pairing. And to make matters even more worser, they installed the G-Maxes on the wrong side of the car, rotating in the wrong direction. So the next time I have the car up on a lift, I'll have to swap them to the other side of the car to make everything as correct as possible. So the question is, why didn't I raise a big stink at the dealership when they did all this nonsense several months ago? Well, it's quite simply because I didn't notice until last week when the guy detailing my car pointed it out to me. Yes, I am that oblivious. Anyway, I've gotten quite a bit off track, which in itself is kind of weird because this whole video is scripted word for word. I just spent several minutes talking about wheel repair problems. How about instead of whining about piddly things that don't matter, I instead tell you why I love this car so much. This was and continues to be the perfect car for me. It's a hatchback, so I can carry things in the back like lumber or half-open bags of cow manure. It has 4 seats and 4 doors, so I can Uber in it or carry children in a car seat. But most importantly, I'm able to do all these things while the car remains impossibly fun to drive. The steering is tight and connected, the shifter is notchy and perfect, the engine is torquey and zingy. The whole car just feels lively, darty, go-karty, and fun to drive. And I even still think so after driving this car for 1.76 million football field lengths. There's a good reason so many auto journalists bought these things when they first came out. They're just so good. And I don't really have that much more to say about it. I just enjoy this car a whole lot. Also, Fiesta STs are far superior to Focus STs, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Yes, you heard me right, Mr. Howell. So, what's next? Well, Ford has already sort of made that decision for me. What I would have done is get the next generation Fiesta ST with its fizzy little 3-cylinder engine and enjoy that for several years. But Americans aren't buying cars anymore. So Ford isn't going to sell cars to America, so I can't get the next generation Fiesta ST in America. In light of this information, what I'm going to do is enjoy this Fiesta ST forever, or until the engine blows up. Whichever comes first. Am I going to modify it? Maybe. Modifications are a way to improve upon aspects of the car that you feel like need improving, but the car kind of is perfect as is, to me anyway, so I don't really feel like any aspects of it need improving. That said, in the future I probably will add a little bit more power and a different exhaust as a way to just rejuvenate my interest in the car and spice it up a little bit. Also, pretty much as soon as I bought the car, I added an aftermarket blow-off valve because I'm a child and I like cool whooshing sounds when I clutch in. So that's my Fiesta ST. I just don't have that much to say about it because it's very good and my forte is generally complaining about or making fun of something. In fact, I don't even have a joke right now, so I'm just going to do something ridiculous off to the side while I close up the video. Used Fiesta STs can now be had for around $10,000, which for this thing is a screaming deal. If you can get a used Fiesta ST, I highly suggest you do because everything about it is great. From the seats to the shifter, to the engine, to the way it drives, to the tightness of it. It's just such a little go-karty fun thing. And it can haul stuff and extra people too along with it. It's just the perfect car for me. Maybe I'm out of touch with the rest of America and the rest of people, but I love this thing. Well, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and thanks to all my supporters on Patreon for your continued support. I'll see you next time.